I want to make this video to talk about MSRP because it seems like all of the sudden these wholesome collectors, people that don't care about value, these people that just blame all the scalpers and everything, all of a sudden people care about MSRP and talk about it. People didn't care about talking about MSRP a year ago, but all of a sudden now we have some sets that come out that are above MSRP on pre-order, and now everybody's talking about it and are upset that these products are not available for MSRP because that matters all of a sudden. It's like a lot of people in this Pokemon community, and I see it all the time online, people that are just collectors, whatever, they bring up the MSRP topic. And what's really funny is that these people only bring up MSRP to the popular sets. Like, people don't talk about MSRP for like Shrouded Fable. People don't talk about MSRP for Scarlet Violet base. But people bring up MSRP for the most high demand sets. Like, people get mad at that Surging Sparks was like MSRP at release. People are mad that Prismatic Evolutions is above MSRP before being released. It's like people in this community are nitpicking the sets that are MSRP and they get mad when things are at that price. But guys, if you look around at all the other sets in Scarlet and Violet, there are so many sets, so many products that aren't even at MSRP yet. So this whole discussion and just people getting mad that these new sets aren't available for MSRP, there's so many other sets that aren't even at MSRP, they're cheaper. So if you're going to get mad that things are above MSRP for the most popular sets, then, why don't you just collect the other sets that aren't MSRP that are lower? Like, why don't you just open those products? Because technically, since they're not MSRP, they're cheaper. Why don't you collect those? And if you're going to be like, well, I don't want to open those sets, then there you go. Why don't you want to open those sets? They're not as in demand. The set isn't as popular. It's like, there's a lot of demand for these sets that people are saying that, oh, why is it not available for MSRP? It's because a lot of people want it. And it goes back to the whole thing with supply and demand. People want to open what's hot. People want to open the new stuff that's really popular. And then they complain that it's over MSRP. Guys, there's so much stuff you can buy right now that's MSRP or below in Scarlet and Violet. But people are just complaining about a couple of sets, guys. Like Surging Sparks, Prismatic. It's 2 sets. Will the future sets be the same way where things maybe go above MSRP on pre-order? Probably. But if you are mad about these popular sets not being able to get them, like, the reason for that is because it's popular. There's so many things you can, still collect that's not expensive. This whole hobby isn't that expensive. It's just a few sets, guys. You can say the same thing about Sword and Shield. When Sword and Shield didn't run up like it was, like, it's just done, like, in the past couple months. Like, when Sword and Shield first came out, all these sets came out, the only really expensive one was Evolving Skies. Everything else was so cheap. Even in Scarlet and Violet, you want to compare everything else, Surging Sparks and Prismatic, and I guess you can include 151 and maybe Paldea now, but those are a little bit older. Like, there's a lot of cheap stuff still. Technically, if you want to talk about MSRP, a lot of stuff are under it. Scarlet and Violet base. I know this is not the most popular set out there, but guys, this is $140. Now, to the person that's been around Pokemon for like a few years now, it seems expensive, right? Because it's not a $100 booster box. But if we're talking about MSRP here and what's fair, because apparently MSRP is what's fair, this is $21 under MSRP, guys. MSRP for a booster box is $161. So if you want to talk about fair here, Scarlet Violet base is very cheap then, because it's $140. That's $21 under MSRP. So this is technically cheap. Paldea Evolved. Now this one obviously has recently run up, so it is over MSRP. However, it's like a year and a half old. So when sets are around this old, it's kind of to be expected, especially if it's a good set where it goes up in value. But yeah, this one's what, $35 above MSRP. So, is that a lot for a booster box? $35? Like, when you put things in perspective, what's that, like $1 more per pack? Like, is that really expensive if you compare it to MSRP? Because that's what we're talking about now. Then, now Obsidian Flames. Obsidian Flames is still under MSRP. So, is it cheap? Because people, I think, just nitpick, like, with the MSRP thing. Like, people will say that this is expensive because they were able to get it before at $100. But if we're talking MSRP, this is technically still fair because it's basically MSRP. Same thing in Paradox. Look at all these cheap sets. They're all under MSRP. $149. Temporal Forces even basically just MSRP, so it's fair. Twilight recently sold out Pokemon Center. Now it's what, $20? Wow, big deal. Above MSRP. So is this way too expensive? Stellar Crown, still under MSRP. So this is apparently cheap because we're talking about MSRP now, right? Surging, yes, this is like the first kind of booster box that really shot up, was MSRP at release, and you could have gotten them even after release. I think for like a week or two, like there was booster boxes still available for MSRP, but people still then didn't want to pay up, and even then people were talking about MSRP, but you could have gotten them for MSRP. And then 151 is sort of the same thing with like Paldea Evolve. It's a little bit older, so you'd sort of expect prices to go up for a popular set that is older. Paldean Fates, this is what, 20, 30 bucks over MSRP, and this is what, like a year old now? Like, is it really that expensive? And then Shrouded Fable. Why is nobody talking about this? This is cheap. This is under MSRP. I think MSRP is what, 50 bucks? You can buy some of these for $30. So if we're talking about MSRP here, look how many things are cheap in Scarlet Violet. There's so much stuff that's cheap. So, this whole MSRP talk, you can even go on the Pokemon Center website. Look at all these products that are MSRP because it's from Pokemon Center. Look how many there are. There's so many available for MSRP. And if you want to complain and say that, these are not what I want, you're just showing all the bad stuff, well, there you have it. You want what's popular. You want what's good. And in this market, the MSRP talk is being talked about so much. It's like people are just nitpicking the good stuff. It's like people are really just going to point out the most popular sets, Prismatic, Surging, and say that everything is unfair, everything's too expensive. But when you really look at everything else in Scarlet and Violet with MSRP, everything's cheap. So hopefully you guys can kind of see what I mean here by the nitpicking thing with MSRP. It gets tossed around this word so much. And when you really look into it and see what people are complaining about, people are complaining about the most popular things. And that's why things aren't MSRP, because they're popular. It's like this hobby really isn't that expensive. And also, you don't even have to open stuff up. Like, there's so many cards and other sets that are under $100 that are very cheap. So hopefully you guys understand this whole MSRP talk and how I just really believe it's super just anytime people complaining about Prismatic not being MSRP and that scalpers and everybody just bought, like, guys, if you want what's popular and what's in high demand in this market, yes, MSRP really isn't a thing anymore, but all of a sudden people want to talk about it. It's like, how can you really complain? Go to the other stuff, collect the other stuff that is cheaper, that's MSRP or below. So that's all I want to talk about. I know recently I've been like ranting about Prismatic, but it just highlights this community, this Pokemon community, especially the collecting side. Like, I understand some of these prices are ridiculously high, like I agree, but just the whole MSRP talk from these people all of a sudden caring about it, it's so nitpicky, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just kind of tired of this whole talk, and that's why I've been talking about it so much, is because just so many people complaining. There's so much stuff that's cheap, that's MSRP or below, but people are just talking about two sets, Surging and Prismatic. Like, guys, are we being for real here? There's so much stuff that's cheap. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.